Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Pop Network podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of introducing Off-Key Anthems and its author, Amina Bhatti, a debut voice whose warmth, wit, and honesty bring the experience of growing up between cultures to life. Born in Pakistan, raised in the vibrant streets of New York City, and now based in Houston, Amina draws on her own journey of being too American for some and too Pakistani for others to create a coming of age memoir that is as heartfelt as it is relatable. Off Key Anthems is a tender, witty, and deeply moving tribute to the immigrant experience, one that celebrates identity, resilience, and the courage to sing your own tune, even if it's a little off key. So let's dive in and meet the woman behind the pages and the powerful story she has to share. With us hosting today is APF Leadership Council member Amber Chaudhry. Over to you, Amber.
Thank you so much, Maha and Amina. Thank you so much for being here today.
No problem.
I want to learn a little bit more about you as a person before we get into you as an author. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey and how you got into storytelling?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So my journey starts off, from New York City. I grew up there. And I currently live in Houston. I am a mother of one, and I actually recently got married. I got married last year, and I live in Houston. I do have a day job. I work in human resources in the healthcare sector. I work for the county. So that's just a little bit about me. My storytelling journey, I have always been passionate about writing and reading. It's one of my favorite hobbies to do. And so the process was just me, writing journals and like little entries for my daughter when she was first born to have a piece of me and memories of me, because I lost my mom at such an early age. Once this year hit, I had set a goal that I wanted to kind of publish a book, and it kind of just spiraled from there. I ended up writing short stories, some of them being true and some of them, not. So yeah, I really truly hope that these stories do resonate with the readers.
No, that's amazing. You mentioned that you're a New Yorker, you're a mother, you now live in Houston, you're Pakistani. Can you tell me a little bit more about what parts of your identity feel the most central to you and how you move and see the world?
So the core of me is my culture and my family. I value both of these truly so much, and that's how I've kind of gone through life. Because when you're trying to navigate two worlds, right? Whether it's being American or being Pakistani, at the end of the day, you have to kind of merge the two. And so for me, it's just finding my voice in that they're both acceptable, they're both okay to be, and it's just the way that we kind of walk through that road. So for me, it's both those values.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the moment where you knew you wanted to write Off-Key Anthems? And did you set out to write that book, or did the stories find you over time?
So I had started writing, when my daughter was born, just to have little journal entries. And at the beginning of this year, I had set up a goal that I wanted to write a book. And so I ended up writing short stories in just about deriving from those journal entries. And because I wanted my daughter to have something fun to read, or I really truly felt, especially like I go to work, I speak to my friends' daughters that are growing up between two worlds, here in Houston. And a lot of times, when I would, share some of my stories, like my personal stories, whether it was at parties or whatnot, they would say, "Oh my God, my mom did the same thing to me." And, so I just wanted to, have something out there, with that was basically something Pakistani. When I was going even through the process, people said, when, I had shared some of my initial writings, they said, just make it desi, don't make it Pakistani. But my core is Pakistani. At the end of the day, Pakistani is so different from being other desis, right? And so I wanted to embrace that. I wanted, to make sure that we have a story out there where someone can read, a child can read, and they can just, say, hey, that happened to me too, or hey, this is my life right now. So
Yeah. And I think you should be incredibly proud of yourself for accomplishing that goal as well. Not to mention that I love the title Off-Key Anthems because it suggests both disharmony and defiance. What does that title mean to you, and how does it capture your relationship with your identity, your culture, and your voice?
I think off-key anthems for me is just embracing that messiness, right? When you have two cultures, and I truly do say this, like when you're absolutely Pakistani, right? Like having Pakistani parents, sometimes they might do things that are just, like you're just like mind blowing, And for me, it was just kind of that, like off key anthems is imperfection, like loving your imperfections no matter how weird they might be. I remember going to school when Pakistan wasn't really truly on the radar, before 9/11. So going to school in shalwar kameez, and people asking, are you wearing pajamas to school today? And I'm like, no, these are my cultural clothing. Or bringing biryani for lunch to school. So it's all of that, just embracing just the messiness of it. Anthems are supposed to be perfect. But our lives aren't. So our lives are truly off key. So
I really love that. And I'm wearing my pajamas today, I guess you could say. So your storytelling spans comedy, heartbreak, nostalgia, and wit. How did you decide which emotional notes to hit, and how did you protect your own heart while laying it bare in your book?
I think I've navigated life through comedy, through humor. I think most Pakistanis do. We're some of the most funniest people out there, at least in my opinion. And so for me, using humor to describe grief, right? I wanted to focus on the grief of losing a mother and navigating through life after that. But I wanted to do it in a way where it's you kind of also focus on the funny parts of going through all that grief. One chapter in the book I think describes about us, laughing super hard during her janaza. I think at one point, my brother had said, just go upstairs, get out of here, because we were just laughing so hard at some auntie holding a cat. So for us, it was just, so for me, it was just remembering all that, all the good times. Life is exactly that. Like you have to remember the good times, even while you're going through the worst times, so you don't fall in a hole.
Totally. And I think that that's why so many of your readers said, I saw myself in this. What do you think makes personal stories, especially from the Pakistani American community, feel so relatable?
I think that when I discussed it, and when I saw people just even leaving reviews, they did say, they that the same thing or similar thing happened to them, before I even sent the book out, for publishing. I wanted to test it with younger readers, and so they really felt that they resonated with it. And for me, that's the most important part. At the end of the day, this book is for young readers to kind of relate. And when they feel seen, I think like that's the most important thing, at least for me, like that, that there's someone out there, someone older, um, that they went through the same experiences, that this is not the first rodeo for everyone, or just, the younger generations. Sometimes, even growing up, I used to go to my mom, you're not going to understand, what I'm going through. But now looking back, I'm just like, yeah, she made sense at that point. So when younger readers, say that this is something that they relate with, it really truly gives me motivation to write a little bit more, to put books out there, that are, similar to our culture and that speak to us.
Yeah, because you're a first generation American, right? So I think it's especially important to share those first generation stories because now we have second generation Pakistani Americans here as well. So no, I think it's so good that you're kind of like laying it bare so that others can relate to. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
And in sharing your deep lived moments, you talked about skipped classes, kebabs, grief, love. Was there a chapter or a scene that you felt laid it all out there? And what did that teach you about vulnerability?
I think for me it was the second chapter of the book. It's basically the mascot of the book, which I recently learned the chakor is the mascot, or like the national bird of Pakistan, which I had no idea. It was just completely coincidence. So growing up, I did have a chakor. After months and months of begging my parents that we wanted a pet, my dad went to a poultry shop and picked out a jaguar, and I remember looking at this chicken hawk type of bird and just saying like, what is that? And we were all just just really confused by it. And then we embraced it, and we used to tie a leash at one point around the bird, walk it up and down the stairs in a an apartment building, and just and that chapter, I guess to me, it speaks to me because it talks about, just sacrifice. It talks about, the chakor ended up being biryani. Um, and so for me, it speaks to me because it was just, at the time, it was kind of like, why would my parents do this? But then, as I've grown up, I've learned about Eid al-Adha. I've learned about other, immigrant children, whose parents did something similar. So for me, it's just like, oh, okay, like, they didn't just stop at just having a pet. They really embraced their culture. Imagine like leaving everything that and going to a different country, and then still being your authentic self. So for me, I think that was like the chapter that resonated most with me, and I still remember that, and I still share that story, and it's
No, I can totally relate to that because my dad had a barn in the back of his house and we had lots of chickens and lots of blue eggs, and I really miss them. So I love that for you. I do want to talk about the craft of storytelling because you said that you do have a day job. So, what rituals, routines, or places helped you write, and what did you do on the days where the words just wouldn't come?
um I guess it's for me, it was setting the time out, right? I mean, I have a family, I love to cook, so I'm always making dinner, coming home, and from sometimes you get tired out, but one thing that me and my husband do have is that he sets some time out for his gaming. And for me, at first, in the beginning, I was just like, oh, what do I do? And like little by little, I ended up just writing my stories into short stories. And then as far as, figuring out when the words wouldn't come, it was memories, honestly. Um, and sometimes, I did have to protect, my family, because I'm pretty sure they don't want all the baggage out there. And so I had to kind of, navigate that with humor or just fiction, and just kind of, write. Like I would write it out, and then I would be like, all right, this is a little too much or a little too details, and then I would delete. And so, so there was like a lot of editing and proofreading, and then also asking others what they thought. So yeah.
I really admire people who are super disciplined, so kudos for you for being able to do that. And can you tell us a little bit more if there was a moment or a person that made you feel like your voice mattered enough to write this book? And how do you hope that Off-Key Anthems gives that same permission to others?
I think for me it was definitely my family, you know, my siblings, my, the people that kind of raised us. Um, it was everyone that are like the most crucial part, because in Pakistani culture, you don't just grow up with your family. You grow up with a mohalla, and people that are your neighbors, and the aunties that have an impact on you. So I can't just pinpoint one person and say like this is the most crucial person, um, because at the end of the day, it's a village, that raises us, that has an impact on us, and that's a part of the story. And there's people that aren't a part of the story, but I wrote them kind of side notes like, hey, I know I didn't mention you in this book, but you are a part of this story, because at the end of the day, um, everything or everyone who was a part of my life at that time and even now, has shaped me and my values now, so yeah.
And
And
some
then as far as just I just hope that this book resonates with young readers, that are growing up as American Pakistanis. I hope that when they read this, they can feel seen. They can feel that they're not alone, in this. That there's people out there similar to them that have grown up American Pakistani, and that it's okay to be Pakistani and American, and you know embrace both worlds, both cultures, and say that that this is our life, and we should be proud of it.
Totally. And if there's someone listening to this podcast that has a story burning inside them, but they're too scared to share it, what would you say to them?
I would say write it. I would say just do it. Don't listen to that voice inside that says that oh, this is gonna be you know just not heard or not seen or whatever it is. Like that voice that tells you just don't do it. Just don't listen to it. Because even for me, like I went through that, and when I shared this book with some of my friends, I had one friend in particular say, I've always wanted to write something, but I'm too scared to. And I think fear is the most detrimental to us. It's that fear, because at the end of the day, if you don't write it, someone else will. You know, and I think everyone has a story to tell. So just listen to that inner voice which says, I want to do this, and just follow through.
Super wise words. And last question, what is next on the horizon for you?
Well, I actually got picked up by a publishing company recently. And so I am working on a second book. And it's going to have, Pakistanis as, the main characters. And it's going to be about jinns. So stay tuned. It will be coming out hopefully next year.
So I personally love gin stories, so I'll be looking forward to your second book. Amina, thank you so much for being here today with the American Pakistan Foundation. Everyone who is listening, go read Off-Key Anthems. I think you can find it on Amazon. And with that, I'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.